City of Northglenn, Channel 8, keeping you informed of events in your community.
Okay, I'd like to call the study session to order of February 1st. Joanna, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Downing.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dodge.
Here.
Councilmember Stensinger. Here. Councilmember Malika.
Here.
Councilmember Sowers. Here. Councilmember Joe Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Becky Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Glickman.
Here.
Councilmember Escobar.
Here.
Thank you. First on the agenda is the Adams County Youth Initiative report. Becky Hoffman. Hi, how are you?
Good evening, Mayor, City Manager, City Council. I am honored to be here tonight, really just to thank you for your ongoing investment into our countywide partnership called the Adams County Youth Initiative. A couple of months ago, I think you received a copy of our annual report, which was one of the reasons I wanted to come by and show you some of the outcomes that our work has accomplished over the last year. So I did bring a hard copy just to bring your attention to our Common Vision Scorecard, where we report county level outcomes. But tonight I'm going to show some outcomes specifically for the city of Northglenn, give you an update of the work that we're working on moving forward. And I promise I only take 10 minutes. But I get really passionate and talk fast, so please tell me to slow down.
All right. We'll slow you down.
So just really get an understanding of ACY's value add for students in Northglenn and an understanding of the work ahead to support student success. So just as a quick reminder, ACY's footprint is we serve the 5 school districts, and our framework is called a collective impact framework. So what our work is to do is to make sure all the arrows, all of our time, talent, and treasure across our partnership are moving towards academic outcomes. So our role is to measure what matters, identify best practices and strategies, and scale what works for student success. Everything we do is related to these 6 outcome areas: kindergarten readiness, 3rd grade reading, 8th grade math, high school graduation, post-secondary enrollment, and post-secondary completion. So that's the lanes that we stay in. One of the most tangible outcomes of our work over the last 8 years is something called the Adams County Student Survey. So we survey every 6th through 12th graders in public schools and have done so for the last 8 years. Actually, the Northglenn High School report came out today, but I hadn't had a chance for your principal to review it. So what I'm going to show you tonight is actually outcomes from a year ago. But really, this survey is really unique. It's census level, and it's given annually. It's really unique for our community to have this level of detail of data. We ask a lot of questions around school safety, substance abuse, adult support, social and emotional well-being, and attendance, knowing all those things impact student outcomes. Last year, the student response rate for Northglenn High School was 76%, and in the data world, we try really hard for 75%. So what you're going to see tonight is good, valid data. So very quickly, throwing law enforcement a bone here in the city of Northglenn. Chief May has actually been on our board since the beginning of time, and Councilmember Malika has actually joined as well. But feeling safe to and from school. So you can see from one of our baseline years was 2009. Kids are pretty much feeling safe at school, a little bit higher from where we started, and feeling safe to and from school has dipped over the years, but is a little bit higher from where we started. 2012 is where we had the unfortunate incident with Jessica Ridgway in the city of Westminster, and it really impacted student outcomes. Truancy, one of the big initiatives Adams County Youth Initiative has been working in is around attendance. We know that students can't learn and teachers can't teach if kids aren't at school, and if they're not at school, then they're probably impacting law enforcement. So this is something we've been tracking over the last couple of years, and this is kids reporting skipping or cutting school in the last 30 days. I'm not real sure what happened in 2012. It would be worth having a conversation with your school district, but we are seeing less and less kids cutting and skipping school.
Is that reported on just the survey that you did?
Mm-hmm. So it's student reported, right?
Okay.
So the last 30 days from the student's perception. This one is also students reported substance use. So this is students reporting using marijuana and alcohol in the last 30 days. You can see from our baseline year of 2009 that alcohol student, again, reported use has gone down, and marijuana reported use for our kiddos has gone down since 2009. Now, I also like to bring up on this slide the kiddos that are habitually smoking marijuana probably aren't at school, right? So they're in our mental health agencies or in other sectors. These are just the kids that are attending school. So student level data is very important to our work. We collect a lot of population level data, but as our capacity has grown as a nonprofit, we're really pivoting our work from population level data to student level data. And what we're really trying to do is to stop using data to merely admire the problem, but to move from a community of interest to a community of action. Working with our action teams around a targeted approach, looking at root cause analysis, and developing strategies and implementations that actually work for student outcomes. So, one of our action teams over the last year, as I mentioned, has been around school attendance. This is a population level number that I'm showing you tonight, so this is all 5 school districts. But we've brought 5 school districts together, nonprofits, to really look at how can we address getting more kids to attend school. Because when we look at our student level outcomes, the impact on math and reading scores when students aren't there is actually quite evident. So chronic absentee rates are when kids miss 10% of school days or more. And so you can see our non-chronic absentee rates and math scores are higher than the kids that are chronically absent. And the same goes for reading, which I didn't put in here. But over the last, our second year of working on this, we have seen a dip in our kindergarten chronic absentee rates. I mean, it broke our hearts to think about 20%, almost of our kindergartners were missing 10% of school days or more. We didn't do so well in our elementary school, but we're excited to see trends populating in the right direction for middle school and high school. Mentoring, we just finished National Mentoring Month. And we have 9 mentoring organizations working to increase the number of kids that having a caring adult outside of home or school or community. With those 9 mentoring organizations, this is again for Northglenn High School in particular. We ask a series of questions about kids having relationships outside of home or school. And you can see from our baseline year, we are seeing that steadily increase in the city of Northglenn. Just giving a shout out to Crossroads Church. They have really partnered with Save Our Youth mentoring organization, and about 3 years ago, they were only serving a couple of kids in our community, and now they're serving up to 20 kids in our community. So just a shout out to a community partner that's helping us expand in this number. So the work ahead, we also have, thinking about 2016, is something called Opportunity Youth. Those are the kids that are not attending school or not working. And we're trying to work with our partnership to identify where those kids are and how we can get them re-engaged back into our community. Substance use prevention. We have partnered very closely with the City of Northglenn Police Department around a program called Homer and Me. We were in 4 elementary schools this last year working on substance use prevention. I think the topic areas were marijuana, alcohol, and prescription drug use, and just a really big shout out to Chief May for having that vision. And then also looking at post-secondary enrollment. So we have a lot of kids that are reporting wanting to go to finish high school and wanting to go to college or post-secondary, but they're not making it there. So our partnership is really trying to roll up our sleeves and figure out why. So I think I'm out of time. I really wanted to stop by and just say thank you again for your investment. And is there any quick questions?
Questions, comments? Thank you again for all your hard work.
Thank you. Here's my contact information. Please give me a call.
It's nice to hear all the data that you bring.
Thanks for the time.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, but stretch, finger come out there.
All right, next we have construction defects. Corey?
I hate to follow that with this.
So maybe
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. This is a follow-up to a discussion that was had last year about options available to the city of Northglenn related to construction defect reform. At the previous discussion, a representative from the Home Builders Association was at your meeting, and she certainly was a strong advocate for a local ordinance related to construction defect. Here we are about a year later, give or take, a little less than a year. On one hand, a lot has changed. On the other hand, not much has changed. What has changed is that, at least as of now, the state legislature has decided not to take a position. Senate Bill 177 did not pass last session, although there are certainly rumblings that it will be back. We know that Lakewood, that was one of the first local communities to adopt what it considered to be construction defect reform, at least based on what we have found, hasn't yet had a condo project. So, which suggests that at least potentially having mandatory binding arbitration as a local ordinance may not have an impact on getting new construction related to condos. And I guess to take a step back, the problem, as it has been articulated by the home builders, is that condo projects specifically, so multifamily owner-occupied projects, are not insurable because of the proliferation of litigation against home builders. It's not worth the insurance risk. I think when you look at what they're talking about, I can at least give you a little bit of insight into why it is so incredibly expensive. And that is, regardless of the nature of the defect alleged, when you think of all of the trades that go into building a house or building an apartment, you think of plumbers, electrician, drywall, foundation, you name it. If someone is sued, typically each and every one of the subs becomes part of the case in addition to the contractor. Each and every one of those subs has insurance. Each and every one of those subs has an insurance company that then provides a defense. And regardless of the merits of the claim, it's expensive to defend. And so when you look at a lot of the options that were presented, the options were intended, I think, not to eliminate construction defect litigation, but instead to make it at least so that there were, everyone had information sufficient to bring forward a claim with consent. So when you look at condo developments, for example, making sure that individual unit owners had information about what was going on, and not just the board. The memo has a lot of what has previously been considered, what other communities have done, but what's new since we discussed this last is the approach that Denver and Colorado Springs have used. And so I sort of focused more on that because it's another option that's available if the city wants to kind of jump into this area. And really what it does is it focuses more on what local governments do. So local governments adopt building codes. And so Denver's ordinance, which is attached, says that even if something violates the building code, there needs to be actual damage in order to bring a claim based on the building code. That doesn't mean there couldn't be another basis for it, but at least under Denver's ordinance, for example, there has to be actual damage. The other side of that is if a given trade complies with the local building code, that's a defense. So you have met the minimum standard and you can't bring a construction defect claim, for example, saying that the codes in San Diego, California are different, and therefore you want to rely on that instead of the Denver building code. So the Denver building code does establish the minimum standard as it relates to claim. And then there's another provision similar to what we've talked about previously that requires informed consent in a common interest community. it's another way of looking at this. And I guess from a kind of 30,000 foot level, what I would suggest as you look at all of this is that local governments are still trying to address this because they believe they're forced to, because there's a problem that has not been addressed yet at the statewide level. But at the same time, I think all local governments are aware there's risk associated with this, because there is a pretty strong argument that construction defect litigation and how construction defect is in fact resolved may in fact be a matter of statewide concern. I guess the last thing I'd mention before taking any questions in terms of how the city may want to go, what a direction the city may want to consider, or questions about that, is about a week before we met last, the Court of Appeals had issued a decision which indicated that a provision in a common interest community that essentially lasted in perpetuity, saying that you were subject to a certain dispute resolution. That case is still pending in front of the Colorado Supreme Court, so we don't have a decision yet from that. So as of now, although that case is pending on review, those contracts are enforceable. And there is therefore an argument that through covenants at the front end, when home builders control the common interest community, there may be a way without municipal intervention to long-term prevent construction defect litigation, or at least require a certain form of alternative dispute resolution in the covenants, so that there is a kind of an intermediate step before you get to litigation. So I think the purpose of this, you had asked for a follow-up. I think the question in many respects is the same, and that is, what, if anything, does the city council want to do in this area, or does it want to continue to sort of watch and wait?
What constitutes damage? Is it physical damage? Is it?
Yeah, I mean,
Is that like something that?
well, and the example I would give, and this is from many years ago when I did work for a judge that did only construction defect litigation in his courtroom, was you could have a standard that has nails have to be spaced so many inches, and oftentimes they weren't. But did it cause damage? The answer to that is no. And so while that was didn't meet the standard of care as it relates to how many nails were in a given area, no damage.
People were actually suing on those bases
Absolutely.
with no damage.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't realize it was that
Because there was a
crazy.
possibility of future damage. And again, this was 20 years ago, and so I want to, but there was, the standard of care is fairly uniform. You have to do so many things under the Uniform Building Code, or in this case, under the Denver Building Code. And in my view, it was, and at some level still is, an industry to look at construction and see if there are defects.
You said codes, you know, the example you made between San Diego and Denver, different building codes and stuff, but I believe that we subscribe to the International Electrical Codes. Is that what that is? Now, would a city have to subscribe to that in order to be held to it, or?
Whatever the building code is that Northglenn adopted, which is the International Building
Right.
Codes, would be the minimum standards, yes. So,
But if we didn't subscribe to it, then
same thing,
They can do whatever they want.
whatever the Northglenn Building Code was, whether it was an international code or whether it was the international code as amended or some other
Right.
code, that would be the minimum standard.
Okay, any other questions?
If the state does figure out a way to solve this, will their solution supersede anything we do here? Or could they possibly form that where it supersedes any individual municipal ordinances? Does that make sense?
That's the million-dollar question. I mean, right now, I think why many communities have been reluctant to step into this is because when you're talking about how to resolve a dispute and the right of a litigant to go to court, which is at some level an important right, and to, by local ordinance, supersede that, the question is, can a local government supersede a litigant's right to go to court? And so I don't know what the state law would provide, but I would suggest it would be difficult to carve out something absent state legislation that said locally, you have to go through this process. And that's the risk that the Lakewoods.
Is that why we haven't seen any building in Lakewood happen thus far with their ordinances?
No, I think Lakewood was aggressive in trying to say, we're open for business.
But if the state does something that supersedes them, then it just...
Each and every community that has adopted some sort of local construction defect reform runs the same risk that it's a matter of statewide concern. It's a matter of degree. Lakewood's is more aggressive. Parker's and some other, in Douglas counties, for example, that have plat notes is a little less aggressive because by doing it on the plat, it's intended to be more like a private agreement between the developer. It runs with the land. So it's not in the ordinance, it's on the document that's recorded that every owner buys with notice of. So if you're looking at sort of the continuum of risk, that's less risky. My opinion, and it is just that, is that Lakewood's, if in fact there haven't been any condo projects in Lakewood, I don't think that's a reflection that their ordinance isn't working. I think it's a reflection that there's still a genuine concern about
From the builders?
getting this resolved kind of finally, at some final level.
Well, the whole process of construction, especially multifamily, takes a long, long time. So a year really isn't even enough time for a plan to have been put into place to see if this is going to affect and bring a new project about either. It takes years.
Any other questions?
Have the other municipalities had condo projects that you list on there that have already enacted legislation? I mean, besides for Lakewood. Lakewood's gotten a lot of press about it, so I've even read about it in the paper, but what about the other ones?
I don't know. I could certainly check. I know that when you look at the Douglas County project, I don't think that was a multifamily project, but I could certainly check.
And from the meeting I had when I went to Metro Mayor's Retreat, they'd had a discussion about the construction defects, and after quite a conversation, it was quite evident that it cost more anyway to build a condo versus apartments. So these developers and builders are definitely going to apartments because it's less expensive to build, first of all. And they said that probably you're going to see condos in places like maybe Cherry Creek or Vale, Aspen, those type of places where it's very high end versus just the communities, the general communities at large. So that was...
And there have been multifamily owner-occupied projects. I don't know if there's a connection between those and the ordinances that are in place.
Any other...
I just think that when we talk about affordable housing, I think that this is going to play an important role in that whole process, and I think it's a fine line that we all have to walk to make sure the consumers are protected, but also to try to figure out how do we get a diverse product of housing available, to our residents, especially I think when we're speaking about Carl's Farm, going to be developed here in the near future, I'm sure. How do we make sure we have a diverse product that's going to be owner-occ instead of just pure rental? With that being single family, potentially condos, potentially townhomes, whatever it may be. But I think it's going to be a fine line to walk. So.
And I guess what I would suggest is while there is a relationship certainly between construction defect reform and affordable housing, I intend to get to you within the next week or so at your request some options on affordable housing. That might help on that piece inform what the council's options are related to affordable housing. That's kind of a different path than construction defect reform.
Since the legislature is probably going to be looking at some type of a bill, I'm kind of inclined to wait and see what they're going to do, And then the courts haven't made a decision either, and so there's a bunch of loose pieces here that I'm wondering. We haven't had any building anyway, or no. I think one development actually that was over by 120th and Claude. But I'm thinking maybe my inclination is to wait a little bit. There's no rush, but I don't know what everybody else is feeling. So
I hate to say it, but I kind of feel the same way.
I'm okay with waiting to see if the legislature brings up anything this year. If not, then I absolutely want to move forward with it, because it is a detriment to the community. Because part of having a diverse community is having diverse housing. This eliminates some of our choices for our residents. And absolutely, the builders are not building it because of this construction defects laws that we have, because it is so much more expensive because of the liability they have to carry in their insurances, and it hands down is a detriment. So I don't want to see it drop for very long, but I am willing to wait to see if the legislature does do something about it, because there is rumblings that they're going to. So I'm not convinced that they're not going to be doing it, but I absolutely think that we need to do something locally this year if the legislature does not address it.
I think developers too, I've heard little feedback about the patchwork environment. You know, Lakewood has one ordinance, we have one, Inglewood has one, and it's very convoluted. So, anybody else have any comments?
I kind of agree with Kim, like I'd like to sit on it for a little while, but not too long. But I would like to ask Brooke concerning Carl's Farm, because to me that would be the area, like Kyle said, that would maybe have a condo project. That's going to depend on how we zone it, or is it just going to be a developer who's going to move in there and build whatever the biggest bang for their buck type of housing in there?
Good question. So one of the exercises that we did last year was this Carl's Farm sort of master plan process with the family members. We're in the process of finalizing that effort. What we've done is, I believe it was either the last regular scheduled council meeting, you approved a contract to do the infrastructure audit for the surrounding area. We're putting that information together along with the master plan for the family, in a sense, as well as for us, to represent what we believe are the potential mix of uses that would be appropriate as well as fit on the site in terms of roadway, utilities, water and sewer, drainage capacity, things of that nature. So to the extent that someone would come in and say, we just want to do all one product, this master plan is sort of informing the development community that that's not what our expectation is. As a fallback, our comprehensive plan that we adopted about 5 or 6 years ago also identifies a sort of tiered mixed-use program for the site. So we have some tools in our toolbox to sort of help navigate what expectations are for the property and how we want to see it be developed. Because I will tell you, one of the biggest concerns that we had on a staff level was that one user would come in and say, hey, I want to develop multifamily all day long, and then someone else would come in and go, I want to put in a retail pad, but not a collective development. And I think what's happened through this process is we've created a consensus with not only the family, but also the development community by bringing them to the table to solicit their feedback of really what is the best fit here. And I think what we're going to see is something much different than what we were concerned about, because I think people are excited about the fact that the city is taking these steps and creating a vision, as you'd say, for the property.
Any other comments?
I tend to agree with Kim and Carol. I think we could wait, but not forever.
Okay. Anyone else?
So it sounds like we should schedule something probably beginning of June or beginning of July, so shortly after the legislative session. If there is legislation, maybe after the CML conference, so we get the information there and can implement. Okay, we will
Thank you.
move it forward.
Purple Dragon. Oh, you're going to be here for a while, aren't you? Can't go anywhere. Spring event update, Paula and Stephen.
Paula and Company.
And company. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Paula Jensen, Director of Management Services. Stephen Stokes, Event Supervisor. We have sent you a memo that I hope you've all read, and we are here to basically inform and get heads to nod and say, yes, go forth. During the budget process, we asked for some money for a barbecue festival for the spring. After research done by Stephen and Ashley, it doesn't make sense to do a barbecue festival as our second new event in the city of Northglenn. And so what we are proposing, do you have party favors?
Yeah.
What we are proposing is that we plan, coordinate, and implement a food truck carnival.
Awesome.
It is a bribe. No, it's simply to get you in the spirit of carnival. The logo, the proposed logo is on the cotton candy. What we're looking at is a carnival behind City Hall here, so on the property in the back, 20 carnival rides, local food trucks from the Denver metro area, midway games, a stage with entertainment, bands. What am I forgetting? What else do you want to add? Face painting.
I was passing out.
Face painting?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So because of the time of year, we'll have the stage area covered by 40 by 80, probably approximate size tent. So stage inside and then the food trucks on the outside edge. We're looking at a primary stage that would have mostly like bluegrass style music, and then a secondary stage that would be either a singer-songwriter stage or kind of not a freak show, but a busker style stage, community, like a performance stage. And then in addition to the 20 cart metal carnival.
Well, it is a carnival, so you.
It is.
have
It's
food
carnival.
trucks.
It is. Yeah, more busker style. Buskers are very popular these days, and would be a good fit. We reached out to the food trucks prior to and asked their interest, because they're in a very unique position right now. They're so popular that they're not doing a lot of sales. They're just taking incoming calls about places to be. So we wanted something that would bring them on their own. They're not going to come to just music. They felt they wanted something else, and that was the carnival combination. They felt was a really, really good combination for them. So the intent would be to have 6 to 8 food trucks each day, and very likely some of the food trucks will change day to day so that they can keep they might be scheduled on a Saturday in one location, so we'll have different trucks on different days, which actually creates some nice variety.
I can't believe this barbecue thing is so.
The to-do?
Yeah.
It's
so
quite the
intense.
to-do.
It's
Yeah,
very
well,
hard
I
to
guess
do.
if you want it to be official.
Right.
Which all these people who make their barbecue sauce apparently are
Official.
official, want to be official or
Right.
whatever. I looked at that and went, wow,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It's true.
I think this is just my opinion about it. I think if you started it 5 or 6 years ago, it's like now it's gotten very popular. There are a number of them in the community, and there's a lot more organization around it. And we visited several barbecue festivals this past summer just to see what they were doing. And in most cases, you have the competition in one place, and then you have the festival almost completely separate. None of the competitors serve food to the general public. So they make up to 100 pounds of meat, and they throw away about 80 pounds of the meat in the competitions because they're serving to the judges. And we wanted something that everyone could participate in food-wise. And it was difficult to find a model that allowed everybody to taste the food from the different vendors in that way.
Yes.
I know that when it first came out, I think it was Suds and Swine or Sids and Swine, so it was beer and barbecue.
Sure.
And I saw that Arvada is kind of going towards the craft beer.
Right.
Was there any talk about maybe trying to go down that path and kind of change it from a barbecue theme to maybe more of a craft brew competition type, I know they have the beer competition downtown every year that's extremely popular. And
Sure.
something like that.
We'll certainly have beer at this event, and we could include craft beer. Arvada has a unique opportunity in their downtown area. They have probably 20 to 30 craft brewers in Old Town Arvada, and they're drawing upon those. In Northglenn, there are just basically the two.
Just the two.
Really just one. One craft brewer and one that you can buy the products to make your craft brew. So that would be the difference. If the interest is there to have craft brewers, we could add that component, but I think we could add it to this event. And we asked the food truck, that's actually how we started with the food truck owners, to say, can we couldn't we turn this into competition? And they said that it wouldn't bring them out and it might deter them from coming because it would keep them in a head-to-head competition, create some challenge, and that they were then making the same kind of food. The nice part about food trucks, different from other vendors, is that they have a unique menu. So the ones that we've already contacted, like one is crepes, one comfort food, Steubens, we met with them and they're interested in coming. Fire truck crepes, meatball, hey PB&J, which is all things peanut butter, La Chiva, which is Latin, and quinoa, which is quinoa-based dishes. The Real Deal also does Latin food and they're interested in coming all 3 days. So I think that we've gotten some good feedback from them already.
So 3 days, yes?
3 days.
Why are you thinking that? Just because of the carnival?
Carnival's
part of it?
100% the reason. And in fact, the carnival may have a fourth open evening on Thursday evening from 5 to 10, that they'll be here. Basically to get them here, it took having a negotiation of saying, how many days can we be here? How many hours can we be here in order for them to make their payroll? They're moving from a site where they are on their own, they can dictate their hours to come here. We had to say, the nice part is with the 20 rides, really they won't ever be, in quotes, sold out. Their throughput for the 20 rides is about 3,500 riders an hour, which we're not going to achieve in the first year. So it'll be a nice combination. People who come to this carnival will have a great opportunity to ride the rides that are similar to what you'd ride at Elitch's. They're smaller, obviously, but they're nice rides.
Is it rides without the game factor? Like
They'll
games
have-
of chance?
They'll have some midway games.
They will have some.
So basically, it's a combination of 3 things: carnival rides, midway games, and they'll have some food component. We won't serve cotton candy, but they will, and their cotton candy will taste better than what's in the bags in front of you.
Maybe that's
Maybe not. Maybe this will be the best food. Maybe this will be the best bagged cotton candy on the planet.
When I look at the carnival, we're talking about the carnival size, smaller than what they do up at the Orchard, obviously?
Yes.
By a third?
We're about 2/3 of the Orchard size. It's the same carnival company, right?
It
Carnival?
is?
Mhm.
Okay.
And I've worked with Wright for the last 6 years, and they understand the importance of the event, both to me and to the city, and have agreed to bring some of their, to bring more large rides here. They'll be in a secondary location in Colorado Springs the same weekend, and they'll have rides there as well, but they'll have technically half of what's there and half of what's here, but it's still about 2/3 of what's at the Orchard.
Yes.
I have a quick question. Have you thought about boutique trucks, which is very similar to food trucks? I know I've been to places like the Big Wonderful, and you have that option of going into these. It's basically a food truck, and you can shop as well. They have vendors, and usually a lot of time they don't charge you to be there. They're just really excited for people to go in and shop.
Yes, we'll invite them as well.
Yeah.
We're not planning on doing additional booth vendors outside of the trucks.
Yeah, just kind of like
but
the
if
truck
they're
idea.
Basically, if they're on wheels.
Yeah,
they're like,
and there's a lot in Denver and
Yeah.
around. Yeah, it's a great
we'd love
idea.
to have them. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Anthony.
With regards to the entertainment, I've been to a lot of different venues around the county
Sure.
and the city, and I would like to see something a little more inclusive of
Sure.
the cultures in this community. You have Armenian culture, you have African American culture, you have Spanish culture, you have Italian culture, etc. And just bring more representation to that culture. I think it would better represent our community, and people would have more reasons to come. When you make it one thing, like Pirate Fest, no offense, but if you want to be a pirate, that's great. I don't want to be a pirate. Yeah. Excuse
Well,
me.
you should come out this year because it's so much more than that.
It is.
I know.
Sorry,
There's a cliche. I don't want to be a pirate.
All right.
But if you incorporate more cultures,
Sure.
then you could have more turnout. My opinion.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments?
Can I just ask
Yes,
about
Kim.
our people? Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I actually have several things. I'm not in favor of starting on Thursday because school will still be going on. Is there going to be anything that's free for people? Because this all sounds like just a money-making thing for the carnival folks, and I think that if we're going to have events, we need to have stuff where, you know, people can come out and enjoy it and not just come out and shell out money for it. And then, speaking of that, if we are going to see people coming out and shelling out money, where's the revenue going? We're putting a lot of expense into it. Are we getting any of the revenue back from it? And in the memo, you mentioned that it's for, you'll gather a large range of participation among young people, families, and a more hip, young audience. What about us old people who want things to do too? I was actually kind of offended by that it was geared towards very much a young audience, and I think that our community isn't just young audiences. I absolutely think we need to have it, but I think it needs to be opened up and things for a broader age range. So.
There was certainly no intent to offend anyone with that paragraph, and I will take responsibility for putting those words down.
I thought Jordan wrote it.
Jordan totally wrote that. What we heard a couple years ago when Amanda and I first started working on this project was bringing in some different events that targeted a hip and younger audience. It is certainly not to exclude anyone else from any of the events. In regards to what is free, entrance into the carnival is free, and the entertainment that will be provided on the main stage is free. Carnival goers will not be prohibited from bringing in their own food and drink to enjoy. There will be, well, I'm going to let you talk about the discounted price for the carnival rides and where the money goes. It's certainly not a money maker. So go ahead, Stephen.
So the carnival doesn't cost anything to bring it in, and then they give us 30% of the revenues. So the 30% will go into the general fund, presumably, as the revenue to the event. The basic costs of the event come to the production of the main stage area and the marketing to have the event work. And ask what questions. I'm sorry, I've been out sick for the last couple of days, so can you ask just again what questions haven't been covered?
You were going to mention something about discounts?
Yeah, excuse me. So the price for the carnival, you can either pay individual tickets to ride on the individual rides, or you can pay an all-day pass, which is all day for each individual day you come. So if you come on Thursday, should we have Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, you pay one price, you get in for the full day to the carnival to do all the carnival rides that you want. The price point is 20 in advance or 25 at the door, which is cheaper than the carnival areas because we're doing a little bit smaller setup. So for people to come and enjoy, they can come to the main stage, they can come to the secondary stage, and they can listen and be there and enjoy all day. Prior to tonight's conversation, the music primarily was bluegrass, Americana, and folk, which won't match 100%, but would match with that age population. I think somebody who's 18 would enjoy that, somebody who's 80 is going to enjoy that kind of music. There isn't a breakdown there. When we went to the high school a few weeks ago just to talk about some partnership opportunities with them, they were excited about having a carnival in Northglenn. They felt like the students would really enjoy something like that. And it's difficult to find things that teens will enjoy and come to. And having done carnivals in other communities in Parker and Arapahoe County in my past training or past experience, it fit well, for that age group. You really saw an age group that's really difficult to get to events to come out and enjoy an event. In comparison to Pirate Fest that we started last year, you have July 4th in the summer. We felt like this was a good addition, so that over the course of the year that we could have opportunities for young people, for folks in their mid ages, and then for older folks as well. So
I think it's a great idea in a lot of respects. I really do. I know that we do many events throughout the year that are at no charge and no fee, and very much focused that way. But I think we have to look at it as an opportunity for our residents to not have to drive to the Orchard, to have it in their own hometown and feel that, you know? I really like the idea. Just wanted to throw that out to you.
Is there adequate lighting over there? Because it'll be in the evening. I know, yeah, okay.
I mean, one of the
Because I was
nice,
envisioning where you were.
yeah,
You know.
Stephen will bring in, similar to a couple years ago when we used that grant building area for a parking lot for July 4th, we brought in those big tower lights, so
Okay.
things like that to light up the area appropriately.
Do you know of any other cities that have a similar event that they charge it for, or at least a ride component or anything else?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, honestly, outside of, so I'm going to say it the opposite way. So outside of Thornton, there are very few communities that don't charge anything for rides. I mean, I can't think of another community that doesn't do, you know, that charges for inflatables, for bounce houses, for water rides, for, you know, they do that. So always on my goal has been to have some activities that are free and then some activities that you charge for, and people can choose how they spend their dollars. You're welcome.
And anything that happens at the carnival is under the liability of the carnival owners and not the Northglenn?
Yeah, so like many things, there is both so the city of Northglenn has liability, the carnival company has liability as well.
You said that the city gets 30% of the revenue from the carnival rides and the games.
That's right.
Is there any estimate of what the revenue might be, or what, let's say, what Orchard does, and you know, how much they?
I could ask the carnival owner. I don't know that offhand. They're in the Orchard for 10 days. They'll be here for hopefully 4. And they're in the Orchard. No, I don't know the answer. Let me find out for you. Okay.
What about the food trucks? Is there any revenue sharing with them? Because I know down at Civic Center Park, those food trucks,
Yeah.
it is pricey to go there for lunch.
Right.
And so we have food trucks, that option, so that's a pretty big cost. And then carnivals are usually not cheap for people that they have to have fun at. So I'm looking at it that this is, to me, it seems pretty costly for our residents to attend if they want to come get food and go do a fun evening of games and stuff. So I'm just trying to look for ways to help maybe
So it seemed like
with some of that cost.
seemed like there were 2
residents.
questions there. I believe your first question was, does the city receive a percentage of the sales? Is that correct?
Or just what the food trucks are going to be, maybe average prices, or if there's a percentage that comes back to the city, or just how they operate.
Sure. So the way that we're putting together the food truck deal is that they would pay us 10% of their net proceeds at the end of each day. So that'll be the amount that'll come back to the city. And then to your second question, the prices in the Civic Center is a little bit more expensive, I think, than what we'll see here. We're saying average of $8 to $10, which is similar to if you come to July 4th and you get a meal. If you go to any of the restaurants in the promenade, they're going to be in that same price range, I would imagine, for dinner.
Okay. Jordan?
I imagine there might be some smaller sample prices, I don't know.
Yeah, to be honest, I really enjoy this idea, and I think I'm really excited for it. Another option is, I think it's something that families can bring their food in, right? You can enjoy entertainment, you can sit in the park, have a picnic, or bring your own food in, which is a great option, that we're not prohibiting people to bring food in. Also with the ticket sales, by it being not only just basing it on, like I've been to carnivals where you pay per ride, that you're giving like an all-day pass, and I don't know if maybe we can find a way to market it at which you can provide a family deal, like when you go to a basketball game or a thing that you get 4 meals and so many rides or something like that to entice a working class family to be able to come out and feel comfortable coming out, as opposed to it being, I know when I was a child, we couldn't afford to go to some of these carnivals because you knew they were so expensive, but enticing and letting families know that we're providing a family package because we want you here. If you're a Northglenn family, maybe we can do a discount portion or find some way to market it that way. It might be helpful.
I can talk to the carnival owner about that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Didn't we do something like that with Pirate Fest too? We had the special,
Northglenn.
the backpack, the tickets, the this and that.
We had a
Living social.
living social deal.
Right.
For
Right.
some swag. Yeah.
Got my share, yeah.
Okay.
Just two quick things. I didn't see it in here because I know that that area that we're using is predominantly for parking when we have events over at the park. So what's the plan for parking on this particular event? And then one quick thing after that.
We're gonna let them park on the park.
So there'll be some parking still available in the west of City Hall, as well as we've identified 2 additional parking areas a little bit lower that we usually use for July 4th, but isn't traditionally day-to-day parking, as well as the RTD. And then also, on the same weekend, there are not rentals in the recreation center, or excuse me, on the pavilion. So the parking lot in the park area is available, as well as City Hall. So,
In the Grant Building.
yeah.
And we'll promote that, we'll market those parking areas. And then you mentioned the RTD, I'm just going to expand a little bit. We will market that for sure, 'cause it's just a walk over the tunnel and you're at the carnival site.
Perfect. And then I love Beer by Design, but if we can market even to have maybe some other craft breweries come in, I think that's always a good thing and people enjoy, so. Along with Beer by Design.
Anything else? Yes.
I just wanted, when we do the marketing, if you could please help emphasize that it's not just a carnival, so that we do get other people and that there are other events going on, and making sure people know they can bring in their picnic to enjoy the music and stuff like that. I think that would be very helpful.
Anything else?
A gift discount for the Northglenn residents for certain. I mean, I think that's crucial. I think we kind of owe it to them to give them that discount, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stephen's made note of all of that. And it's important to us as well. I mean, we want it to be a great event, and a great event that the community that surrounds us wants to attend. We don't need any formal action, so we won't be coming back to change anything. We just felt as though we had to come and explain that we've asked for money for a barbecue festival, and we're not going to do that. So if everyone or the majority of council members are good, Stephen will go forth and get to it.
All right.
Because May is right around the corner.
May 12th, and I like the time of year too.
Yeah,
You know, it's not so long, you know, so, yeah, it's good.
Go for
Okay.
it. Is that the name? Food Truck Carnival?
It
Food
is.
Truck Carnival.
When do we start movies in the park? When does that start?
August.
August?
That's another great
Call it
one.
like it is.
Are you gonna have anything on
Right
the
around the
logo
corner,
that
right?
identifies Northglenn?
Pardon?
The flag does.
That ends in the flag, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It might be tweaked a little bit. I've kind of held on to some reins and said, don't do too much until we get in front of council. So I think tomorrow morning, Stephen's gonna start doing some work on this. And so there might be some tweaking on that logo and stuff, but there is an N in that flag, isn't it?
Yeah, I see that.
Right. And that marketing material is bigger.
All right, okay.
So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So Stephen, I want to know, do you know Greg Stokes?
No, I don't.
No? All right. Thought I had a relative thing for you.
Maybe. He was born in Texas.
I know.
see how we hit? Jordan will be there.
Okay.
Dragon Becky.
Yep.
I feel it.
Kim, speed bumps?
I don't have
You
anything.
requested?
Talk about
Okay,
it.
you want to talk about speed bumps? Or who's going to talk about it?
I mean, I can start. I mean, as I understand that the issues is there some of the constituents on Melody Drive are concerned with
Various.
Various.
areas in the city, not just.
okay, so the issue of speed bumps, when the speed humps came up. As a result, I asked the chief and John to look into accident data. I've had our radar trailers out there a number of times. And I can certainly share the results. The posted speed is 25 miles an hour and the 85th percentile is 30 miles an hour. It's a very large roadway that is 5 miles an hour over the posted speed, but my opinion is that I don't think that constitutes a speed issue. I can ask John to come up front if council desires and talk about the accident data. There's been, I think, 5 or 3 accidents in 10 years there. 2 are hardly related to the area in question. So I can certainly answer any questions. And I guess the final piece that I asked the engineering division to do is critique the 1992 speed hump criteria that I think staff has been using sort of as guidance here since I've been here, since 2009. There was a resolution that went with that. It looked like it was for a specific area. I did provide that in council communications along with, we looked at two policies along with critiquing of that, one from Commerce City and one for Thornton. I provided that communications Friday. I didn't provide the policy of the other cities for public viewing. So I guess I just, if council wants to do some action, we can certainly develop our own policies for speed humps. I guess in this particular instance, I don't see that there is a merit to install speed bumps on Melody.
That's what I was going to ask you, because I got a little lost of where you were talking about specifically. So you're talking about Melody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
From south of 104th.
Okay.
But again, that's just one example of areas where people have requested speed bumps, or they've requested over Rosianna Drive. I know Carol's gotten requests for speed bumps over on Ward 1, so it's not just one area. It's really, what do we want to do as a citywide? And I absolutely agree that I don't want one on Melody. I don't think that it's prudent to put one over there. But at the same time, I think when people call and ask, hey, what's the criteria, or what we want a speed bump, we should be able to do something other than just say no and just ignore them. So that's where, I've been looking at it, and do we have a comprehensive policy? So if somebody on Melody Drive says, we want to do this, what's the criteria? Can we look at this? That same criteria is applied for different, same types of streets.
We look at every single request that comes to us, and we do that by issuing a traffic operations request, and we apply the 1992 data to it. So, I don't think the staff doesn't address those issues.
No, I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying that as a council member, it's been no. We haven't had a comprehensive discussion at a council meeting to talk about, do we like this criteria? Does it need to be updated? What do we need to do? It's mostly just been, it doesn't fit. So.
I was sent an email by a resident and a councilman that says, just say no to him, so, he wants us to just say no to him, so.
I think we all got that.
Yeah, so.
Gotta love him in spirit.
I think it's worthy of a conversation, because I remember when this went into effect, God, that was in the early 90s, and it was for the same reason. There was a lot of speeding, and so we developed the criteria, and it has not been addressed since. So it's worthy of looking at it, but I don't feel we've ever said just blanket no to people. I've always, and I think we just refer them to staff. Joanna gives them the criteria, and then it's up to the residents to decide if they want to move forward with it or not. So.
I'm not in favor of it, but I'm pretty opposed to speed humps or speed bumps. I know of other communities that have had them and they've taken them out. I think it's a nightmare for many reasons, and I wouldn't necessarily just tell a resident no. I would definitely explain that, and more frequently than not, we had it on 118th. We even had a neighborhood meeting about it, and the very residents that were speeding were the neighbors, so I'd tell your neighbors to slow it down.
That's right. It's very costly to take them out. I think it's more costly to take them out, if I remember that correctly, than it is to put them in. So.
But if you drive through Thornton neighborhoods, there are a lot of speed bumps within their neighborhoods. Now, it's not on the connecting streets or the main thoroughfare through the development. It's definitely proliferating, I think, in Thornton. They've got a lot of speed bumps. I drive through neighborhoods all the time, taking my kids to see their friends, and every one of their neighborhoods has speed bumps. Now, in Fox Run, where people wanted it along Fox Run Parkway, well, there's probably 3,000 cars that go on Fox Run Parkway, and they speed. And I don't think a speed bump fits there either, because too many people use it. And we have tried to deter it with the speed limit signs, but some people do, and some people just ignore them. So I just think it depends on the situation in the neighborhood. I think if it's a certain small neighborhood where one is warranted, if you can prove that there's a reason, maybe there's an accident, maybe someone gets hurt, but just overall. But I agree with Kim, because I was in that same situation. It's like, what is our speed bump criteria? So as long as there's a way for us to go to something, to show the resident, look, read
Right.
this, and this is what it
Yes.
is.
The 1992 policy, I don't think it's too far off base. If anything, I would say maybe it needs to be modernized. The two cities that staff looked at was Commerce City and Thornton. And Commerce City, I sent that to council on Friday, had a nice tiered approach. And the 85th percentile is basically the 85% of the cars go X speed. And they have a tiered approach between, if the posted speed limit, say like on Melody, is 25 miles an hour, if the 85 percentile is 30, that means 85% of the cars are going, or the 85% of the cars are going 30 miles an hour. Obviously, that's 5 miles over the speed limit. Sometimes it's 33 miles an hour. And so Commerce City has a tiered approach about how much above the posted speed the 85 percentile is that triggers certain actions, all the way from as simply as setting out the radar trailers, occasionally putting a police car out there, checking accident data, all the way to a more, I guess, comprehensive approach by having a public meeting and polling the community about their perceptions of the speeding, and getting consensus from the community or the neighborhood in that case. So I guess what I'm saying is that, I mean, if council's desire is to modernize the policy that I think is probably more current today's standards, we can certainly, I can certainly have staff do that and come back to council.
I think that if we have a policy and there's an actual policy out there, it's got to be revised, you know? So at least, I mean, even if we don't make huge changes to them, we show that we have addressed it, we've looked at it. So it definitely needs to be revised,
I agree.
hopefully in a more timely manner than
I mean, it's time.
last time, yeah.
And other city websites have really easy access to it. I noticed when I went to look at other cities, it was like speed bump right to it, and it's on a nice web page, very explanatory. I think we could use that also, so.
Okay, so.
Anybody else? I think that's,
We just volunteered you to revise the policy
No,
on the hump
Be
criteria.
my pleasure. The staff has already been looking at it.
And David, what else do we have for, not just speed bumps, because I'm not going to use this other word, but traffic calming for neighborhoods? I think that's really what we like, I would want to know is, what other methods are there of traffic calming to address some of these issues? Even though, knowing that it's generally the residents in the neighborhood who are causing them, but are there other options? You know, Melody is pretty wide. Is there something that's would help with the issue while it's not a speed bump?
A great question, and
That's what I
the answer is absolutely yes. We can develop the traffic policies. We can give examples of other types of traffic calming. In fact, I would argue that the speed humps are probably the least effective.
I agree.
And there are other great examples of bulb outs, bump ins, you know, things that can take advantage of other modes of transportation and narrow the road system down. There's landscaping. All of those, unfortunately, are extremely costly. But I could certainly, you know, put together a draft policy and for council's reference, show you examples of other types of traffic calming, types of structural traffic calming elements that we can install into the streets if council chooses to do that. Some of it may come up on corridor plan that Brooke is working on. Those elements and features on certain classified roads may be something council desires, and we put that in the corridor plan. So when we get to capital projects and redo a corridor, you got the guidelines for that. All of those things are very important.
I would like maybe information, not necessarily for you to put together an actual policy on some of the other traffic calming, but certainly information on some different options that might be available.
Yep.
So that would be excellent. Okay.
We can do that.
anybody else?
Thank you.
No? Thank you, sir. All right. Next, we have project work plan assignments, David and Brooke.
Thanks, John. Okay, well, thank you, council. I've invited my partner in crime here tonight. Anyway, late last summer and last fall, I was asked to look at some of the work that we have on the docket, primarily generated from the strategic plan. Recently I've had a chance to look at that a little more carefully after we've got through the budget process. But you know, the fact of the matter is we have enormous amount of very important work, and I don't want to diminish the strategic plan one bit. But the places I've worked at in the past have had ad hoc groups, they've had steering committees, they've had other forms of council or government involvement to help move some of the work through the city system. You know, and when you look at the memo that Brooke is, I think, carefully and expertly crafted here, there's a number of planning assignments, and you know, I would say by default, or a lot of these things just haven't come around in a lot of years for the city. So I can't stress upon the fact that these are all very important planning exercises, and there's just not enough business time to get through all of this. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to have Brooke go through the memo here and talk about a possible protocol or a process that council would hopefully might consider to move some of this work through. And believe me, what we're suggesting is it's still all-inclusive. This is not meant to exclude any council members. We're looking for a way to really roll up your sleeves, get work done, I think get back to council, and certainly keep, you know, at the end of the day, when some of these exercises are getting near, going through the drafting process all the way to being adopted, we want an all-inclusive type of process. So with that, I'd like to have Brooke start and hopefully get your consensus on this.
So does everybody like the cotton candy? Great. I had everything to do with that, and so because I came empty-handed, just know that that was part of the plan. They're gone, I can say that now, so.
The only thing I can say is I looked, and it's 270 calories and a lot of sugar.
But I'm pretty sure it's that.
There's a lot of air in there too, so just know that.
Fat-free, that's all they can.
Before I get started, I also want to mention one thing on the traffic calming. The bike ped mobility plan that we have slated for this year is actually intended to look at that aspect as well, as far as traffic calming and identifying those kind of corridor areas as well. Okay, so transitioning back here, I'm getting feedback. I'm going to move this back. My voice projects a little too much. Part of what came out of this is that out of the strategic plan, we identified some projects and expectations for council to sort of bring forward and say, here's some things that we can do to meet your needs and your expectations. And in doing that, when I first sat down with the former city manager, the question was, does council want to do the heavy lifting and getting their hands dirty as part of the process? And the direction that we went then was yes. And so when we created the civic master plan, when we created the citywide sustainability project specifically, we had it in mind that council was going to want to do the workshops, the charrettes, the sort of like, I think for the civic campus, we had a tour plan to do those types of things. In addition to that, what we wanted to do was primarily is to have council get comfortable and build consensus for projects in general. The feedback that I've received is that we're taking up too much time of the council study session docket. A lot of these projects, you do a disservice to them if we spend 15 minutes and then say, are you okay? Is that good? Is that what you want? And really what we want to try to do is to create an engaged conversation that really does identify key root issues and or improvements and elements that are worth consideration. And what I'm struggling with is that just with the civic campus this last year, we were slated in September to go on the docket, and then we got pushed to October, and now it was technically going to be slated for tonight. The challenge that we have with that is that because that was we put such an emphasis on community engagement, we wanted to make sure that each time we touched base with the city council, we went out and touched base with the community. And in doing that, we had a very integrated system of reaching out and making contact and getting feedback and trying to build consensus as well as understanding about what we were doing. And each time that we delay that meeting with you, we have to reschedule all of that. And what's happened is that it's just become to a point where it's not working well from that standpoint. The other thing that we did is, knowing that we have limited time in front of the council study sessions, we also piecemealed out a lot of these tasks so as to not overwhelm the council with, say, a 2-hour-long conversation or discussion, and trying to condense information at the same time. We think that if we were to take a different approach, depending on which project we're talking about, we can not only save time, but I think realistically get to an end point here much quicker in terms of what the final outcomes will be. So keep in mind that the other part of this is, the reason why you don't see a very elaborate matrix of how this is going to work is because before we go back and talk with those projects that are currently under contract, we have to revisit with them and try to say, okay, here's the new schedule, here's the programming. We wanted to get feedback from council to see if this is in fact something you want us to consider. We have 3 different categories here that I'm happy to answer questions about, but in general, I think my bigger concern is that when we started the strategic plan, staff said, hey, we can go do this, and what we're running into is just the sheer logistics of trying to get on council dockets, and then recognizing that some of these exercises take time to go through, and it seemingly is something where perhaps there's not as much time as we had hoped for to do that.
Okay. Questions, comments?
I like it. Definitely. You know, we're not going to be able to be thoroughly involved, hands-dirty and everything, but I like splitting it all out and spreading it out. That makes sense.
And my understanding is there will be some ad hoc committees that whomever would like to join them.
So the way we have this generally set up is that regardless of where the project gets assigned to, council would receive the information at the same time as whatever group is reviewing that, and also council is invited to attend. If we have enough council members, we'll notice it for a public meeting, just so that there's not an open meetings issue. And I think more importantly is that we also tried to structure this to make sure that there was a council presence involved, so that if for some reason a project is dealing with an issue that all of a sudden raises a flag and it comes back, that there's a moment for that council person or persons to come back to staff and say, we need to bring this to council.
I mean, what's the plan to, if something has to be spoke about in executive session, and
we would
if
do
another
that.
council member wants to be present, I know Joe's on NURA, but let's say Antonio wanted to go and Carl's Farm was on executive session for that night. I mean,
sure.
So,
nothing that we're talking about is public process, and it's nothing different than what we had previously identified that was specific to council. So I don't foresee that would happen. What we're talking about is like for Civic Campus, we have 5 more council meetings scheduled. The challenge that we have with that is those are probably hour and a half long conversations, and the direction that I've been getting is we need to reduce those down to a 15-minute conversation for direction.
I'm going to totally put you on the spot right now. Who was giving you that direction?
I've been getting that direction from Dave, saying that council has expressed concern about the meetings taking too much time.
It's not only that, Kim.
I am sorry, but that ticks me off. And I'll just leave it at that, because that is certainly not my take on it. So I'll leave it at that.
Kim, I guess, when you look at the amount of work that has to go through the city, and I've said it a number of times, and I've acted as a city manager twice in a row now, it's an enormous amount of work, and I think we're all blessed to be able to come to consensus and put together an unbelievable strategic plan, but the timeline, the commitments, and all the components of the plan are completely unattainable. I've done this many times in the past, and there's just not enough business time in the city to run it through like we've got a plan. The alternatives would be to take it in series, and we're talking probably a couple of years to get through this stuff, and it's all very important. And again, this is not meant to be an exclusive process. This is still meant to include everybody. You have, once a month, we have an economic development update and a financial update. That would just be part of it. Maybe there's a 15-minute planning update. The council members that are involved, like Anura and Joe, I expect the council members to advocate to the other council members what are going on. So there'll be plenty of opportunity for input. We're just trying to, I'm not reinventing the wheel. This is done in a lot of other cities, and how to manage the work and get things done in a productive way so we can put some of these planning activities in process and start utilizing them right away.
And my understanding is some of the projects are going to be on hold because you don't have enough time to do all these things.
Well, and I think right now, the zoning code has been on hold. The civic campus by default has been on hold because the council study session dockets have been filled with other items that have had more pressing time and priority. So the challenge that we have is just merely trying to make sure that we're meeting your expectations on these planning projects, because I watched through the exercises that we did this last spring and summer, and I could see fatigue on people about how many times we're coming back talking about the citywide sustainability assessment, about the civic campus, and keep in mind that this process is not taking council out of the mix. We're merely trying to take the heavy lifting exercises off the study session docket and reassign it to someone else. The key milestones and decision points that we're going to be bringing forward are still going to come to the council because you guys are going to be the decision makers on this. We're just trying to figure out a format that will work for time and expectation as well as what schedule is available.
So I guess a couple of things. I'm a little surprised. I mean, I don't have that feeling. I think it's important for us to be participating in these items, and I get that we still will. I think it's our job to be here at study session and be listening to them, and that's part of being elected to council. So I don't have that fatigue feel, or what I don't want to have happen is that it's holding things up, or that we're like a bump in the road. So I don't want to have that, but I think for me, I get questions from residents about these particular projects all the time, and so I feel like if I'm only reading about them, you don't get quite the same level of information. So I'm not sure that I necessarily want to just like get the packet and read it. I find it very valuable to hear it. That's just my personal take on that. But I think at some point, if we could back out the level of detail that we've gone into, yet still keep council up to date in study session, I think that would be my preference.
And I think the last part of what you just described is what we're trying to accomplish here. I think
it seems like it's like going away and we're going to get a little update. So maybe
no, I think, and I think the challenge here is that is getting an understanding for what council's appetite for workshop and design charrette exercises, which can take, realistically, 2 and 3 hours. And when you look at that, and tonight, it's 7:20, and after all the agenda items, this is a light study session. Are you ready for a 2-hour, planning exercise?
Because I walked off till like 10:30 tonight.
All right.
So
and so, I mean, that's the $64 question. Now, I can tell you right now that this last year, one of the challenges we had is that when we started doing budget, those take up a lot of time, and the civic campus got bumped because of budget. We realistically look at, from my standpoint, this is what I sat down with David about in terms of logistics, is that we have about 16 meetings, study sessions, realistically, that we can get these things on the agenda for. And that's also trying to figure out all the public outreach and coordination that comes accompanying with that to make sure that we're meeting all those benchmarks. What we're talking about here is rather than 5 meetings for the civic campus, maybe 2 meetings or 3 meetings, where we're bringing you the final decision making, or if not so much the final decision making, but the key decisions to say, we've come this far, we've done these exercises, here's what we have come up with, what do you think, so that we can proceed forward to the next step. It's not excluding, it's more or less trying to reassign some of the heavy lifting aspects to the exercises that we've programmed. And once again, if you want to attend, I mean, I am perfectly fine going through the study session process, I just want you to know that we're trying to, I would agree with David. When we set this out, we wanted to make sure that we had an engaged process, that you guys were lockstep with this, and that we were also engaged in the community. And the sheer logistics of it are kind of coming up to saying, that's a lot. And the question is the council up for that?
So I would like to support Marcy and Kim because this is kind of what we signed up for. I mean, that's why you ran for election, and this is your job to vet these projects, because in the end, you're the person that's responsible. We're the final decision maker up on the dais making a decision over projects that maybe, we're not micromanaging enough, and maybe that's just us not being able to let go. So I do get that other cities have steering committees. I mean, Denver is the prime example of throwing things to subcommittees of the council to get things done, because they've probably got so much. I guess just in Northglenn, I look at these projects and go, if you take these off the study session dockets, what are we talking about? Because these are the main, these are just the most important projects. So I have a concern there.
I'm not sure. What else is out there?
Well, you're saying our dockets are so full of other things that we don't have time for this, but some of these should be the main.
I think he's saying he gets bumped by things that are more important, and then we're slowing
Because
down the
they're
ability.
time sensitive.
Each of these items here, for instance, under the Planning Commission, they might involve anywhere from 5 to 10 more study sessions. So you're not just looking at one study session for each one of these things. Each one of these has an evolution cycle, and and to do this, you've got to roll up your sleeve and spend a couple hours and go through this. So I'm not suggesting that we're excluding any council members from a decision process or keeping them informed along the way. I'm only suggesting there is another process, a parallel process can work here. If you want to do this and bring each one of these back to council meeting, the business time is going to be stretched out over a couple of years, and if that's acceptable to council, we can do that.
So maybe we need to go back and look at the amount of meetings on each one. We're all elected to represent people. Do we need 7 public meetings for each one of these? No, we don't. That's part of what our job is. Yes, we need to have some public input, but we don't need to have 7 meetings, outside with each of our groups and stuff. I think sometimes we get too focused on wanting public input, and we have to, have 7 meetings with the public for this one project. No, we need to have 2, maybe. We need to have 1. They can come into a study set, to a council meeting and say all they want about any of these, so that we always have opportunities for public input on all of these. And maybe we need to look at that and say, we said we were going to do 5 sessions, we're going to do 2 or something. And I absolutely, if we go this route and move these, I think having the civic campus master plan and the citywide sustainability assessment under NERA is absolutely no way at all, because those are absolutely, no, that's just not. And my other concern is, in the past, things don't always get communicated to the rest of the other members of council. We do have an issue with communication among us at times, and that things that happen, we don't get updated about. So that would be my other concern about having these separate steering committees and different things like that going on.
Kyle?
I would have to disagree with Kim on going out to the public, especially regarding, the civic master plan or the justice center. I think that if we're going to be spending millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer money, I think we need to get as much input from them as possible. Some other things maybe not so much, but those particular issues I do. I would be lying if I said that it's not difficult to release the reins a little bit. It's been done this way for a long time, and so I think that if staff can just understand that a little bit too, that it's been done for, that way for a long time. And so I think so I'm not sure if it's going to be an overnight change or if it's going to be an easy change. I think Marcy made a great point though, and that's that as a council member, I don't want to get in the way of progress for the city. And so I don't want to be slowing or be an anchor to you all trying to get done what we've asked you to get done. And so that hits home with me. I just think that, what Marcy was saying is maybe there's a gradual way that we can do this, or where we can start getting used to the idea of going to these types of committees, because I just think it's a difficult
The
process.
priority of which ones we feel
Right.
like we can let go of a little bit more, because
Yeah.
I'm not so like
Well-
into the bike ped mobility.
Absolutely, and I guess, let me speak to a couple of those things. I think that one of the things is that under the Planning Commission, they're actually, one of the tasks that they're charged with is to look at doing master planning efforts, and that's never been done before. I think my perception, since having been here, is that there wasn't a lot that happened before 2012. And that I think the comprehensive plan and the corridor plan were like the only two planning exercises that I'm aware of that happened before that. And so when you go back in time, there is no really frame of reference. And so when we did the strategic plan and when I sat down with John, we were in uncharted territory as far as what council expectations were as to how to manage these projects. And I think that, what we're trying to do is, and especially what I'm trying to do here, is manage expectations and make sure that if you guys want to do the heavy lifting, is that there's a lot of time and effort going into this, and that you guys are going in eyes wide open, and that's fine. I think, Kim, just like, for instance, on some of the logic here, that in terms of where I was at, on the citywide sustainability assessment, we have one more meeting scheduled, and part of the logic with presenting it to the NURA is because the tool itself that we're creating, they're going to largely be rested in. The other thing is it identifies the council priorities that you had said were the top 5 redevelopment priorities, to sort of help shape how that's going to look. And I think the third part of the citywide sustainability assessment was to answer the question, are we okay? So my thought process was, well, we've already told you we're okay. You've seen the economic model. You know what your priorities are. The idea is that if we presented the final report to the NURA, with council being involved at the same time, that it was a stepping stone for them to sort of go, okay, we're going to take over the heavy lifting from this point forward and start carrying out the vision that was identified in the plan. Now, on the Civic Campus Master Plan, the idea being that we have 2 council members that sit on the Planning Commission and NURA, and that part of this is an economic redevelopment opportunity because it's in the URA. The other part of it is because Planning Commissions is generally tasked with master planning exercises. And so that was the logic behind that. I want to tell you that in terms of how these are configured, I'm not married to any of it. It was merely to sort of give a frame of reference to start a conversation with.
Just 2 quick things. So my only thought when I see the planning commission list, and maybe that would change because they'd have topics, but I served on that as the liaison, and they meet so infrequently, it's like you go 3 months without having a meeting. So I guess my only concern is, and then they struggled to have a quorum. So whatever was going their direction, I guess I would just hope that they have meetings.
I think that's part of, I'm sorry.
Go.
But I think I see the same thing, in the Planning Commission, and I think that's because they haven't had a lot to bring into play. So maybe perhaps we need to provide them more leadership as we expand out on this role, They've met every other week since I've started going to them.
It's great. That was a concern.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because my concern is only having my experience in the Planning Commission, right? Is by parsing out or, doing it like this, there has to be, in that particular area, I'm just talking about Planning Commission right now, there has to be a kind of a restructure on how we look at things. And I think that something small to start with would prove, would help us a lot from a Planning Commission standpoint. And I think that each of those people on that commission would relish at the chance to take it a step further, because that's basically what we're asking them to do.
So just really quick, I think a couple things is that one of the reasons why we looked at the Planning Commission was because of how underutilized they've been in the past. And when I was talking with Travis about this morning, one of the things that was interesting is that before I started, I think there was a couple of conditional use permits in 2011 and the conditional use permit regulations for oil and gas, and that was like almost the entire docket for 2011 because nothing else was going on. Planning Commission has largely been just for entitlements. We've not done any other planning exercises with them, and I think to your point, we've also had a lot of attrition because of it, because I think people signed up expecting to be doing more than just that. So that's kind of the yin and the yang that we've had. I can tell you right now we have 3 candidates for 2 positions, and I believe that we're going to be doing interviews on the March 1st agenda for that, which is great, because then we would be fully staffed. Because since I've been here, I think we've always had at least 1 vacant position, which has been the challenge with meeting a quorum. So it's, once again, it's another thing, but I think your point is well taken, is we don't want to overwhelm them either. I think it's more of saying, look, this is a resource, hasn't been fully utilized, it could serve this function.
And I really do think that they would embrace it. I do.
And I've had feedback from them as well, the same.
I just want to point this out. When Kim mentioned about citizen engagement and getting people involved, and Kyle mentioned it, and I guess what I would say is, if this is just a frustration I have with residents, is that we plan this for you to have engagement, we ask for you to come out, we schedule 6 to 7, and then we get nothing from the residents. And so understand that your lack of participation holds up projects as well. So if we take off 2 or 3 of those and we reevaluate that, we're doing that because we're holding up the project and you're not engaging anyway. So I hope that's an encouragement to get residents to participate in all the forums and all the participation that we need.
All right. Anybody else? Kim?
Well, so
It's a mixed bag here, but I think we want to try it, maybe on a small scale, and just kind of move forward.
Well, okay, so I'd have to echo that. I would try it, and then I think we all have to sit here and agree on which things we would want to try it on. I mean, to me, I definitely would like to utilize Planning Commission more. I get that they could be doing zoning code rewrite, bike ped mobility, sign code, HEAL. Those make sense to me. It's these big ones that I have more of an issue with, of council letting go the reins. Civic Campus Master Plan, that one I really don't like at all. 112th Station, Justice Center, branding chicken and bees. I mean, those are all things we've had to own up to this point, and we've had to answer God knows how many questions about all of those topics, and then to be taken out of it. I guess you just have to feel our frustration on our side.
No, absolutely. And let me reinforce the point, is that we're not taking something away as much as we're trying to help spread some of the work. And I think that to that end, we can work with with the feedback you're giving us. But I just want to make it very clear. It's like with Civic Campus, all right. A great example is that we were going to do that bus tour, I think, of Inglewood, Lakewood, and I might have been downtown, to kind of give you a sense of how a mixed-use development was. And the bottom line was nobody wanted to do it. Why did we do that? Why did staff want to do that? Well, because we wanted to get you guys out on the road having conversations about what your vision was for the Civic Campus, and trying to understand and giving you frame of reference just to measure against what you guys are thinking, to real world examples of what it looks like today in other communities. And the thing is like, it was going to be, I think we had it scheduled for a weekend, and it was like, not interested. So and to me what that is that's heavy lifting, okay? But more importantly is that what I'm suggesting here, like with Civic Campus, and once again, we are happy to bring it to you, is that we wanted to make that what we want to be able to do is bring you in at the key points where it's like, okay, this is what we have. We have options 1, 2, and 3. What do you think? And then you go, I like 2. Then we go, okay, this is our next step. This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to go about doing it. As opposed to sitting down and looking at the bubbles and moving the squares around and trying to figure out the densities and understanding that kind of stuff. I mean, that's the question, is where do you guys want to be in that process? So, and I'm happy to accommodate what you guys want. I just want to have this conversation because I don't want to disappoint when all of a sudden just sheer logistics get in the way of getting things done.
If I may, because I'm new to council, obviously, and I'm half lost where I am, I think splitting this up doesn't make sense to me, because I need to learn as much as I can learn, as quick as I can learn it, and being here and not being here isn't gonna work for me. I need to be in both places.
Then you can be.
But is it our job to be at all? I
mean,
mean,
then we're gonna be every night. I mean, I'm already at Youth Commission, NAHF. I mean, I do all those other things. So now you're saying, well, yes, you do have the opportunity to go to these, which is great, and I think we all should, but it's also a matter of, yeah, we're limited time too. So,
I kind of see this scenario kind of like another scenario that we're dealing with, where we had to ask ourselves at the beginning, do you want to get all the way into the weeds of it? Do you want to ask this many questions? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? I just want to, I want to ask a question and then propose a question at the same time. Basically, what you're asking us to do is help determine the minutia that can be pulled away so that the planning can go faster, correct? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Because everybody has their hands in the weeds right now to get to 1, 2, or 3. Is it a 1, is it a 2, or is it a 3, right? You want to somehow come up with a plan to where you get to what is a 1, 2, and 3 faster with less people's hands in the garden. Maybe not less people's hands in the garden, that was the wrong way to say it. But without, there's not a nice way to say it, without dragging through every step. So I kind of understand where you're going. Just from the little experience that I have on city council, right? And my other life, I am a control freak. And it's something that I'm trying to adjust to. That's just me. I'm a control freak. But if I give up control of making you come before me, am I going to get all the information that I need? My past experience shows that the way that you're talking now is the only way that we can move forward in it. Rather than, otherwise, just like he said, we're not going to get anywhere near a timetable that we want, because there's so much stuff down at the bottom that gets excluded before you ever get up to 1, 2, and 3. And as an executive leadership team, maybe we need to look at where we need to come in. We don't need to be in at the topsoil part. Maybe briefing at the beginning, then get to a point and bring it in. And I think that's what you're trying to say, or that's what I'm trying to grasp from what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that in as so much as part of what we do in these planning exercises is educate as well as inform and then solicit feedback. By way of example, the Civic Campus Master Plan, the first cut of the presentation I got had over 90 slides. And the reason why it had 90 slides is because we did, I'm sorry.
oh no, go ahead, I'll finish.
We had 90 slides, and part of it is that they did a parking demand and off-peak parking demand analysis to sort of show how you could fit the parking for all these different uses on the Civic campus, and not need, say, 1,000 parking spaces. Instead, you might only need 400 parking spaces. Well, we had a very iterative way of detailing the methodology that we use and everything else. Okay, which for the councils, they're going to be going, can you get to the point? We just want to know what the answer is. And I think that's what we were struggling with, is how much information do we share with you? And really, is this a conversation that is better served somewhere else, to where we come to you and we basically show you the one slide that says, okay, this works and here's what the parking requirement is, as opposed to walking through a 15-minute exercise of understanding how off-peak parking demand analysis works, or looking at the marketing and mixed-use typologies that we look at, and not getting too much into the planning world of how we talk about things. So to your point, that's an example of I think the minutia that we struggle with, because then are we giving you too much or not enough, and then we end up guessing at what's the right mix. And that's been our challenge, is that we've been batting pretty good at guessing what the right mix is, but we're not always getting it right. We want to.
Jordan? So what I'm trying to understand is, if we go along with this, you're going to set these meetings and then we have an option to attend, correct? So I think that either, and I understand the point of we have limited time, right? Like, you're in this, you're doing these, and you have these meetings every night. So either we decide this and go to these optional meetings, or we have study sessions starting at 6 p.m. and until we're finished with these slides, we don't leave. But what I'm saying is, we can go through these 3-hour-long slides with you, if you bring them to council all the time. So we're not worried about keeping it light, we'll just be here until the next. So I think that we either go to the meetings or we take it all in, right?
I guess the thing that I struggle with is, and, maybe you haven't gotten these phone calls yet, but wait until the residents start calling and asking you very detailed questions about these, and you stand there and you don't have an answer, because you weren't at the meetings and you might not have read the packet yet. There's just valuable discussion that I think council ended up having by having these meetings, and maybe it's that we want 60 of the 90 slides instead, and so it's striking that balance. But I think that there's a way for you to kind of evaluate what is too much detail and what is enough, because I think there's just too many of these things that council really needs to be a part of and having that discussion.
And then how do we define what I'm sorry, Kyle.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was wondering how we define what's too much detail and what's too little detail, or what detail is needed, unless there's a subgroup. Otherwise, do we just say to him, okay?
We have a subgroup. We had a subgroup that was doing the zoning code rewrite. We were a part of it, so we're not any further along in that.
I have a quick question, Brooke. And so the idea came up about, starting this off with maybe some of these smaller projects, the bike ped mobility, the heel, the sign code and all that. If some of those smaller projects went to this style to start off, would you foresee that some more space on our study sessions would be opened up to do some of the bigger things? You see what I'm saying?
Sure. And
because I feel like we're having a tough time letting go of maybe some of the bigger projects, and maybe not such a tough time with some of these smaller projects.
So let me give you some context. Civic Campus, zoning code rewrite, stationary master plan, and the citywide sustainability assessment. Those are the 15 meetings that we have scheduled for this year. That does not include bike ped mobility, the sustainability, the sign code, the heel, marketplace. And keep in mind that these are the major projects. We have, when I drafted this memo, we had 11 other agenda items that are non-project, long-range planning project related that we have to schedule for council this year. We're actually going to be bringing the IBC to be updated. We've got
Tell them what IBC is.
International Building Code. We referenced it earlier. We've got 3 CDBG issues to bring forward to you. We've got 3 RTD fast tracks related issues to bring. And those are the things that we know of today. We've got the sign code. We've got HEAL coming forward in March. I mean, now all of a sudden you look at that, and now I think when we did the tally, we had 39 agenda items as of January that needed to go before council this year.
But that's what I'm asking, if we can take some of those agenda items off and start with this process. I'm just trying to find a middle ground, because I don't see, I'm not seeing like all for or all against really. Right. So
I mean, any kind of, in order to try to, I guess, for lack of a better description, get council Ds, any kind of assignment I think would help. And when we're talking here tonight, we're really talking about just the planning projects. I got the Justice Center, which is on here, the Ralston House, $20 million worth of other projects come here. Amanda's got projects. So there's just, it's not just the planning projects here. There's a lot of stuff that has to go through the study sessions, and we can certainly do whatever council wants. But if we have to take a baby step, like I said, I'm just looking to get some consensus, maybe some buy-in to try a portion of this.
See, and I think you hit it right there. These are just Brooks projects. It has nothing to do with Amanda's projects or your projects or anyone else, any other department. So
I think the analogy that you used was pretty good. As far as you feel that you need to explain to us how you got from point A to point B. You shouldn't have to. Your guys' job is to get from point A to point B and tell us what the result is. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't care how you figured out how many parking spaces need to be in this hospital zone. Just tell us this is how many parking spaces are going to be here. If anybody has any questions, they can ask them at that point in time. Mm-hmm. You guys need to do your job. And I think, and this is the gut that I'm getting, is that I think you guys feel that you're micromanaged to a point to where you have to you have to explain everything step by step. And I don't, that's not the way it should be. I do glass, you work in a hospital, you work for an IT company, you work for the government, you work for the government. We don't do what you guys do. You guys have to do what you guys do.
I will say this, I don't feel micromanaged at all.
Well, I do, okay.
So I just to be clear, I don't. I think where we try to be very cautious when we take on, to me, Civic Campus Master Plan is a once-in-a-generation project. So we want to make sure, and Marcy, this is to your point, okay? We've condensed that presentation to just the parking. We're telling you what the number is, and we're telling you that this is how you can make this work. You're going to get asked a question. Well, what methodology did they apply? How does that work?
Parking in particular, because it's the one that always comes up.
Sure. So the thing is that usually what we do is we build in risk against the challenges or issues that people are going to have with a specific issue or element of the project. And what we try to do is give credence to that and take that into account when we put together our information. For you as a decision maker, you get to sit and listen to that while it may not be that germane because you have confidence in staff or you believe that it's a sound methodology and you don't need to be bothered with that. But we program and hedge against that to manage the risk of getting one asked the question or having somebody go, well, how do you know they really looked at that closely? They're just telling you that. And so that's part of what we try to hedge against. But I want to make, I don't feel micromanaged. I just feel like I personally came to you through the strategic planning process and said, we can deliver this, and what we've run into is just a logistics issue, and want to just bring it up and say, here's where we're at.
And I guess I'll bring this one up, and I can't remember which of these it was, but we had the consultants that drove up here one time for a presentation. They were here like 10 minutes, and it was, I think Jean had a really good point in that sense that, like, if we can anticipate that we just want to give a quick update, and then if there are questions, then we can follow up with the consultants, but that would have been maybe a way to have condensed a meeting. So maybe if we can foresee some of those that we could maybe pull off.
Sure.
Maybe.
And let me give you a good example of when we did that. Quarter master plan. We made a presentation. We had a bunch of questions. We answered those questions. We walked away going, we don't need to bring the consultant back. We've got consensus. We came back, we didn't have consensus. And so...
You want to take it out. You want to take it out anyway, so then you're really not going to have consensus.
Well, but I think the issue is that the format in which we chose not to go into detail, we misread as everybody being on the same page, and when we came back with the final draft, everybody had more questions and less confidence because we didn't go through the detailed exercise, because I did not read it right. I thought we had the consensus we needed for that, and we misread that, and we created more concerns and issues that created doubt about the process. And I think that's the other thing for me, more importantly than anything, is we want your confidence in what we're doing. We don't want to cast doubt because we misunderstood or misgauged what you guys wanted at that time. So guess what we do? We throw the kitchen sink at it to make sure we don't make that mistake.
Well, I'm good with you throwing the kitchen sink at it because I want that level of detail, and I don't have an issue with you being here, other than it sounds like we're holding you up, and there I have an issue, so.
Well, it's not so much holding me up as much as it is meeting what we've set out to do in terms of the schedule and the expectations. Because right now, the Civic Campus was scheduled to be done at the end of March, and we've had one meeting, and we had 6 programmed, and basically we were, between the Civic Campus and the citywide sustainability alone, we had planned to basically go every other meeting, you were going to have one of those 2 agenda items before you, not taking into account stationary master plan or zoning code. So that was the original program because we wanted to get it done, and it just didn't happen that way.
And there's a part of me that feels like if that had happened, this case, you guys would have made a better case for it because,
you would be tasting it.
Yeah, and we'd be like, whoa, that's a lot on our plate. So yeah, maybe just keep that in mind too. But I don't know. the big thing that keeps popping into my brain is I don't want to hold you guys up. We set the goals out, and I just don't want to be the anchor, like I said. I don't want to be an anchor for you guys trying to do your work. And so trying to figure out a way that we're still getting what we need as a council to make the decisions and to satisfy our constituents, but at the same time, have you guys moving full force forward.
And I think to the extent of satisfying your needs and the message to constituents, this can work. The question is how comfortable are you with it? If you're not comfortable, the alternative is that we come to you more often, and I would even suggest perhaps one other alternative to this is that you schedule a separate study session in addition to the ones you have now to accommodate the workload, because that's also very doable, and we can make that work. So once again, the one thing I don't want to do is you guys get bombarded with mind you, this is just planning department world stuff, is that all of a sudden you're like, okay, when is it going to end? As opposed to feeling like, wow, I'm really contributing and helping make this community what I want the vision for this community to be. And that's the balance I'm trying to strike here.
So what if we took a couple of these projects we could decide and then we saw it in action, prove it, if it could work, and let's see it? Because I think council, we got to see it to know how it's going to work.
So what I can do is I'll come back and provide a little bit more detail as to how this might look. And I think the big thing here is that keeping in mind is just the timing and keeping projects moving forward. But at the same time, I'm happy to put a little bit more effort into this if this is something you guys would like us to do in terms of showing how this can really work.
I think that's a good idea, show everybody how it's going to work. Yeah. Because I don't want to be stopping productivity either. And for me too, what level is an elected official supposed to be at? Are you supposed to be doing staff work? Because there's a certain piece of it staff has to do, and sometimes we just get into this micromanaging, even if we don't realize it, because all of us are basically, in business and pretty extroverted and want to do everything ourselves and manage everything ourselves, and we do have staff, highly qualified staff, that really can do it and bring back a product that then we can make a decision on, and if we don't like it, we can tell them and they'll go back to the drawing board again.
The only thing I'd say on that is that a couple of these big projects, not just staff projects.
No, I know, but I'm just saying a lot of the things.
So I don't feel like I feel like that's why we were elected, to be part of those projects, not just passing them to staff. I think there's smaller ones that can be, but I just don't share that sentiment.
You're not fully passing it to staff, though. You're still making the decision.
Right. And I'm saying staff does it
If you look
anyway.
at all these projects, how involved have we been? We've had discussions, we've had conversation, we've had it go different directions, and you put it back on staff, and then they're going to bring it forward, and then we're going to say to them, you went the wrong way on that.
And that's a frustration.
Oh, and now I got to go back and do it again.
Right.
So you're just creating the same amount of work for them again.
I think that's a frustration for everybody.
And this is going to fall on staff. Been in plenty of these meetings where, some people will say how they want to go, and some people will say how they want to go, and other people just won't say anything. So I think it's up to staff to say, Brooke, you're not going to leave that table until you have a definitive what direction to go, and not let any staff rise from that position right there and not know their direction. Because I know we've done it plenty of times, and I've walked out of here with my head spinning sometimes as well. But I think that staff needs to call us on it and say, okay, this is it. You know what I mean? Because you can't sit there and tell me that you haven't walked out of many of these meetings going, well, I'm just going to take the quarter out and flip a coin.
Not quite that bad, but
close.
Let me say this, is that I try every time I'm before you guys to make sure that I have a level of comfort about what the direction is. And, I will tell you that one of the things, a great example of that was chicken and bees, okay? You guys came back, the council, the new members weren't here for this, but we had 5 no's, 1 on the fence, and 2 in support, and the consensus was to bring back 2 policies.
Which makes no sense whatsoever.
No, it doesn't.
Yet, like you said, there you are stuck having to do it.
But
You know.
here's the thing, is
We had
that
85% of the community that was surveyed.
but that's not relevant. To Joe's point, I went back and listened, and the clear direction was bring back 2 separate policies.
Right, that's
And I can tell you that there was no consensus on support of it.
Well, then at the next meeting, when somebody says, why the hell aren't we looking at this, break out the tape and say, take a listen and see if you hear the same thing I heard.
And just, number one, I think tonight has been the first time that I have heard, we can't do it all. And so for me, I absolutely appreciate that we've been told that, because this is the first time that we've been told, you know, we really can't do it all. And to me, that's awesome that you've come back and said that to us. And so it may be up to us to decide, you know what, we might have to put 1 or 2 of these on hold for 6 months, 8 months, or whatever, because there isn't enough time in the day. And I, for one, sure, we can do that, sure, we can do that. And so we've just been piling on and piling on and piling on and saying, sure, do another project, here's another, here's another. And so that's bad on me. So for all of staff, I apologize that I wasn't being aware enough of just how much this was taking. And so I completely appreciate that you all are coming back and saying, we just can't do it all.
So wouldn't this be a good thing to bring up at the council retreat and have a
I think we
conversation
should.
before making
Right.
a decision or making you do too much more work?
Well, yes, absolutely.
But let me, the other point I want to make is what I've heard tonight, and it goes back to before the holidays, when I was sitting up there and saying, why are we canceling so many meetings? And now we come in here tonight, we had delay this and delay it and delay it and delay it, when we should not have canceled those meetings so we could have moved forward with this stuff. And so that really torques me on this one too. That, you know, we could have been moving forward on some of these, but instead we canceled over a month's worth of meetings. So that's bad on us for having done that.
And Kim, I appreciate you saying that, and let me also just, because I think part of the issue here is that my expectations my goal is to meet your expectations. And the fact of the matter is that I work and live in a world where, you know, you make it happen, okay? You figure out a way to make it happen. And part of bringing this to you guys tonight is that we can reasonably make this work. It's so much as the logistics that we've run into and encountered, we wanted to bring to your attention, because this is a way to still try to meet those expectations. I just think that I want to make sure that we don't overwhelm you as a group to the point where it's like, why are we just getting bombarded with all these planning projects? So, and I think that's what we're trying to do is strike a balance.
Okay, I have to say something, okay? I feel like your approach would have been better taken had it not been like this is our fault, like council's taking this ownership and apologizing. The whole situation is a good place to be in. I mean, the city's thriving, it's busy, the departments are busy, you guys probably are understaffed, planning, I know that you are. These are all problems that have arisen and we've gotten to this point. But I do refuse to apologize because I don't think we did anything wrong. I think now we're trying to handle the situation, and it's hard for us to know what the best way to go is, and we do want to help you guys. But to me, I also agree with Kyle where we have to just take some smaller steps of which ones council's okay with getting rid of and which ones we still really want to be fully involved in. That's it.
And I think I heard, you know, pick something and kind of put it to a plan to show everybody, you know, how it would work, whatever it is, you know, so. That's what I think I heard, you know, so we have an idea, you know, how if it's chicken and bees, I mean, I don't know what it is, you know, whatever it is, and just kind of phase it in and see.
Yeah, and Carol, I just want to say, I don't think we're holding our council at fault for anything. I mean, you know, when I look at the work, you know, it goes back to the time when we developed the strategic plan, and Brooke may smile a little bit about this, but, you know, we were euphoric that we just had a blessing from our council to do some of these very important studies, and every time I saw Brooke walk up to the whiteboard, I'd say, good Lord, brother, you know what you're doing? Because I knew he didn't have the staff to do this. And so if anybody's fault, it's our fault for overcommitting these things. And I think we're just trying to manage expectations right now. We can get through this any way that's possible, we'll try to do it. And believe me, we certainly appreciate you guys being here and supportive of us. And, you know, I don't think we're here today trying to assign fault or anything. It's just that, you know, I think I remember that day. It's just that we were just overwhelmed with, you know, good feeling about we're doing some great things for the city, and then, you know, months go by and just say, oh my God, this is just an enormous amount of work. I don't know how we're going to get through this, and that's really where we're at. It's nothing more. We don't, you know, if anything, we're at fault for not managing your expectations a little bit better. So that's why we're back here.
And that's why I'm here, is because I red flag went up and I wanted to get this in front of you guys. So I don't. Personally, I'm frustrated with myself for having us in this situation, but at the end of the day, I don't want to set us up for failure either, and so I wanted to have a conversation. Now, to Joe's point, I've heard several mixed comments here about what to do next. What I would suggest and throw out there for the council to consider is that we can take a look and look more at how this actually would play out over the calendar year to give you maybe a physical picture of what the schedule would look like in a more detailed way, just from a study session standpoint. The other thing that we can also do is, I think what would probably be worthwhile and maybe part of the conversation for the retreat is prioritization of what's important. What we have right now happening, what those elements look like from a time commitment standpoint, in terms of your time and study sessions, so you can better understand what that looks like.
Well, and I think that the prioritization of stuff is perfect, you know, but you can take that stuff that's not as high a priority and use it as a test model with one of these committees and say, okay, let's take chicken and bees and let's throw it to whoever, whatever, however you want to do it, I don't know. And just see how it pans out. Whatever's further down the line, maybe we can throw out to a committee as a test. You know, something that's not like really right now. Something that we're not falling behind on, but something that's still down the road.
Understood.
That's my feeling. Now, I can go with the test, and I like the idea, and I can go with the test of maybe throwing a few out there or whatever. But I really think that I like just to hear where you guys have come to instead of how you got there.
You know, and I think this is a good conversation for the retreat, the prioritization of it, and moving forward. I think this is a great topic for it, along with the strategic plan and everything else. Like, it all falls together. It does.
Okay.
What does everybody think?
So we're discussing at the retreat?
Well, I think prioritization of it.
I'm good.
But what's the...
Well, Brooke said he was going, because Brooke just said he was going to come forward with how this would play out with these different committees.
Right.
That's kind of what I heard.
And he said he was going to do that before, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So what I can do is I can provide more detail as to how this program could work, as well as also show you more in a graphical way the scheduling issue with the existing projects, and then show you what the bringing on more projects would look like in terms of the study session commitment. And you guys may look at it and go, that's fine. Or you may look at it and go, okay. And mind you that these are just planning related issues. So, because I don't want to usurp, and all of a sudden Dave has to bring something to you, or Amanda has to bring something to you. Well, you know, Brooke came to us and said, he's got to meet this schedule, and then, I don't want to do that either.
So maybe I could suggest we do this work and I could send it to all of council. Or just unfortunately, then I think the next study session is a holiday. And then the planning, I guess the retreat is on the 20th.
We'll have something together that we can have circulated.
Okay.
One option, but I'll just throw it out. Some communities have a study session before their council meetings.
They do.
We already start at 6 on our study sessions. We could start and do a small hour-long one, before our regular council meetings. Because then it's still, that is more time commitment to us, but it's only an additional hour, for the Mondays. Like tonight, the Adams County Youth Initiative, that could have been at a regular meeting. It might have been better because I imagine more people watch our regular council meetings than they would have been out to the community. So maybe that's something we can discuss at the retreat too, what's actually on the various agenda items. I don't know, but just sitting here thinking about, you're worried about overloading us, and sure it was only 10 minutes, but it may have been better served to have them come to regular council meetings.
And normally we have those type of things at regular council meetings. So, okay. All right. Any other suggestions? All right.
Well, I think
Do
we've
you have
definitely given you
clear-
guys some things to think about. How's
Do you
that?
have a clear idea now?
I do.
All right, okay.
Thank you.
It's not 5-2.
Okay, I'd like to adjourn the regular study session and call to order the special city council meeting. Joanna, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Townley.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dodge.
Here.
Councilmember Snetzinger. Here. Councilmember Mullica.
Here.
Councilmember Sowers. Here. Councilmember Joe Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Becky Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Whitman.
Here.
Councilmember Escabel.
Here.
Thank you. I'd like to move to go into executive session pursuant to section 4.5 parent B of the City of Northglenn Home Rule Charter for the review of applications for any appointed position. Interviews and appointments shall be conducted at an open meeting. I need a second, please.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. We are in executive session.